Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Xavier Caddle, and today I am going to be presenting my dissertation proposal entitled Mosafely, Building an Open Innovation Community to Promote Adolescent Online Safety through Multidisciplinary Collaborations and Teen-Centered Risk Detection. I'd like to begin my presentation today by first introducing the product of my dissertation research thus far, and that is the modus operandi safely open innovation community for youth online risk detection, or Mosafely for short. The name Mosafely comes from our desire to help youth engage in online interactions more safely. The Mosafely community was created to attract individuals from multiple disciplines and have them collaboratively work on youth online risk detection efforts. My proposal this morning puts forward a design probe study of the proposal Mosafely community. But before discussing that study, I will share with you how we arrived at the need for such a community. My dissertation research has been conducted under a National Science Foundation funded research partnership project called a Multidisciplinary Approach to Detecting Adolescent Online Risks. The project is being executed at the University of Central Florida, Vanderbilt University, Georgia Tech, and Boston University. The NSF requirements for this type of funding dictate that the researchers demonstrate the commercial potential of their research. To that end, we are required to work with an industry partner, which for this project is Mozilla. An important requirement of this type of NSF project is that a dedicated student must receive training in entrepreneurship and leadership development. The student undertaking those tasks in this project is me. This meant that my tasks as a student were not just academic centered, but also included entrepreneurial efforts. My dissertation thus represents a merger of both of these streams of inquiry. Now, the ultimate goal of the overarching project is to show that research being conducted to improve youth online risk detection algorithms is commercially viable. That commercial viability is a product or service spawned from academic research outputs, in this case, research on youth online risk detection algorithms. But why is youth online risk detection algorithms important? Youth in the United States are heavy users of internet platforms. And in 2022, Pew Research found that 95% of US teens have smartphones and 95% of them use at least one social media platform. But this internet usage does not come without risk. As teens use social media, they often share private information about themselves. And they also interact with a wide array of people that makes them susceptible to online risk, such as pornography, sexual solicitation, cyberbullying, mental health issues, and suicide. A study conducted by Livingston and her colleagues in 2022 found that 50% of teens reported that they experience online risks, such as receiving sexual messages and threats. Now, traditionally, the burden of protecting teens from online risk has fallen on the shoulders of their parents and guardians. They sometimes resort to heavy internet access restrictions. When we look at consumer products developed by industry, we find that many vendors capitalize on this by creating technology solutions to restrict online access and interactions in some form. However, researchers have found that technological solutions fall short in a number of areas. For instance, they may only be usable on specific platforms. They often take a black box approach in their design, which is another way of saying that they lack transparency, and they may only focus on extreme risk behaviors. This led us to query if we could possibly shift some of that responsibility of protecting youth online away from parents and guardians in a way that empowers teens while also making social media platforms a bit more accountable. In this work, my colleagues in the NSF project have progressed youth online risk detection by making strides in collecting ecologically sound youth social media datasets, pushing the boundaries of risk detection in the areas of sexual risk, real-time risk detection, cyberbullying detection, and image-based risk detection. These represent advancements in the technology. However, I had to interleave entrepreneurship and leadership into the project to assist with the goal of creating a commercially viable product or service. Under this setting, I led the team in 3 major training exercises, one of which was the UCF Innovation ICOR, or UCF ICOR for short, which is NSF ICOR site that administers training for entrepreneurial teams seeking to complete customer discovery. They use the lean startup method and the business canvas models to do this. And I served as the entrepreneurial lead for the team. For academics, this training forces us to take an entrepreneurial mindset and demanded us to get out of the building, as the catchphrase goes, then figuratively speaking, because of COVID, and speak to individuals such as potential customers, detractors, competition, and partners to determine what a minimal viable product would be within the context of our research. In thinking about who those individuals we had to speak to would be, given our research context, it was helpful for us to use a socio-technical system model. This kind of model had been previously used to investigate youth online safety solutions, where the environment the youth resides in is seen as the social component, and the technology they use is seen as the technical component. Using this model, we were able to kind of initially identify the primary stakeholders in youth online safety, that is, the parents and the teens. Goal-wise, the teens are avid internet users and want to interact online with their peers, and parents want to keep their teens safe. However, prior research has shown that the technology of parental control software is often not transparent, as we said, about how the protection is done and leaves the burden on the parents. In essence, we found that there was a lot of literature on the primary stakeholders and parental control software. The ICOR training, however, demanded us to talk to a wide cross-section of individuals. And since the primary stakeholders have been investigated even under this same NSF project, our focus shifted to the other stakeholders. This grounded led me to my overarching dissertation research questions. My first research question explores who the secondary stakeholders in youth online safety are and what their thoughts are on the current state of youth online risk detection. My second research question explores what challenges those secondary stakeholders face in the execution of their jobs. And my third research question explores how the secondary stakeholders find out when youth are exposed to online risk. Finally, my last question explores what technological solutions could be put in place to assist in youth online risk detection, to assist the community, assist those secondary stakeholders. Now, no single theory has been created which encompasses the youth developmental environment and technology, but researchers have in the past used Bronfenbrenner's 5-level ecological systems theory to investigate the dynamic interactions that humans experience and how they affect our lives from childhood and beyond. Yep. Now, by focusing on the primary stakeholders who are parents and teens and their interactions, much of the literature on online safety has focused on the first and the second levels of the system, those being the micro system and the meso system, respectively. By investigating secondary stakeholders, my dissertation brings into focus the views of those at the third level, the exosystem level. And those include like mass media, social services, and local government. Now, one of the major tenets of the ICOR training for customer discovery is the need to identify what your possible target markets are, the pains the members of those markets have, and what they think could be done to help the situation. This is what my first dissertation study does. It is entitled A Stakeholders Analysis of the Socio-Technical Approaches for Protecting Youth Online. It was accepted to the 2024 Future of Information and Communication Conference. Here, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to my co-authors and a thank you to Abdul Malik, my lab colleague, who assisted in the effort. The study uses much of the introduction and background that I've given so far to situate itself as an investigation into the views of secondary stakeholders on the current state of the art and for the challenges they face in those solutions. I also explored what their views are on the challenges, on the mitigation of those same challenges. Hence the research questions: how do stakeholders in the domain of youth online safety approach the problem of youth online risks to keep youth safe online, and what those challenges are, and how we overcome those social technical challenges to make strides in protecting youth online. The study took the structure of a semi-structured interview session, which was conducted on Zoom. The sessions were recorded and transcribed, and then open-coded for thematic analysis. 38 interviews were conducted along with the help of my Sterilab colleagues, and each of the sessions lasted between 30 to 45 minutes or so. The questions in the interviews were open-ended and asked the participant to tell us about themselves and how they interact with teens, the legal safety concerns they came across while executing their jobs, and how they handle youth online risk exposures, and also what could be done to assist them in their efforts. Participants in this study had roles such as entrepreneurs, information technology professionals, researchers, clinicians, and educators. And you would notice that we group clinicians and educators because those clinicians who identified as licensed clinicians, they actually perform day-to-day roles more along the lines of advocacy or safety education. Now let's get into the results of this study. For question 1, which queried how they approach the problem of youth online safety, the participants provided 3 major categories. The foremost category was using artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques. The second was taking a general approach to youth online safety. And the third was implementing parental control software. For the first approach, the participants openly stated that they use AI and ML and other data analysis tools in their business operations to achieve their goals. They discussed topics such as coupling AI with human intervention in order to effect positive outcomes, which might be directly tangible, such as protecting youth from predators. Some outcomes, however, were also subjective in nature, like when entrepreneurs stated that while they use AI, they are really just placing the control in the hands of parents or giving them control over what action to take. This is exemplified in the quote, which reads, "What we do is we give tools for parents in order to monitor their own kids in their own family's activities so parents can set alerts based on the type of content being accessed." The second most prevalent approach was the general approach, and this was favored more by IT professionals. This spoke more from the perspective of satisfying the needs of clients or project requirements. In doing so, they said that companies they work for needed to meet industry, legal, and government compliance around youth online protections, and thus they sought technological solutions. Even so, in speaking about meeting these needs, the approaches they raised tended to be more about control, restriction, and moderation implementations. This brings us to the last approach, parental control software. In speaking about this, participants spoke about providing tools to parents and guardians to enable them to mediate technology usage how they see fit. And this ranged from tools to allow them to monitor what youth do online, as well as to implement restrictions such as screen time management and content filtering. Question 1 had also investigated what challenges these secondary stakeholders in youth online safety face. The challenges shared by participants were categorized under having to balance the privacy of teens versus protections that their solutions offer, diffuse accountability of internet-based companies, the subjectivity of risk, the lack of data, and also the cost of technical solutions. The points here that I want to draw your attention to, though, are diffuse accountability, lack of data, and costly solutions. For diffuse accountability, there were complaints about big tech companies failing to play their roles to protect youth from online risk. Entrepreneurs felt that big tech companies were shirking their responsibility to address teen online safety issues when they were the ones who have the ability and the resources to do so. Take, for instance, this comment from an entrepreneur in which they stated, "I think the social networks are like the place that should be addressing this. And I don't think they're going to unless something catastrophic or some real threats to their revenue happen." Researchers, on the other hand, they shared that the youth online safety community is decentralized and has various perspectives and interests. They said that this might contribute to what is called the bystander effect, where everyone waits and sees, but no one takes the lead to intervene in youth online risk situations. For lack of data, participants lamented about not having good data sets to work with to build models to accurately detect risk, which in turn limits the amount of protections their solutions are able to provide. The sentiments of IT professionals, sentiments of this IT professional that is shown on the screen represents this succinctly when they said, "We don't have access to the data about what apps kids are using and what is actually going on in that page. And that level of detail is something that we don't have today." The last challenge that I want to draw your attention to is the cost of technical solutions. When participants spoke about lack of access to data, they also spoke about the cost of accessing and storing that data, as well as the cost of building solutions around that data. They said that they often have no choice but to adopt cheap solutions which don't benefit anyone. This brings us to research question 2, which investigated what could be done to mitigate those challenges that the participants raised. They put forward 4 main ways of doing this in order of most prevalent to least. First, they suggested taking a centralized multidisciplinary approach to youth online safety. Second, they talked about having sustainable plans. Third, they talked about prioritizing human-centered designs and development solutions. And fourthly, they talked about leveraging state-of-the-art solutions. In the context of moving my dissertation forward in relation to the goals of the larger project, I zeroed in on the fourth and last mitigations. Those stood out. That's what I'm going to present this morning. And in discussing a centralized and multidisciplinary mitigation, the participants suggested created a centralized standardized application programming interface, or API for short, that could be accessed in an open source model. This would drive down the cost of implementing youth safety solutions and allow smaller companies who market products to youth to focus more on their business value proposition while still providing necessary protections. They also suggested forming partnerships and collaborating with others on youth safety issues and solutions, even if they are in a competing business. Now, looking at the mitigation of leveraging state-of-the-art AI solutions, they talked about data sets being used in those AI solutions being kept current, as well as experts being involved in the modeling and prediction stages of those technologies. They stated that solution creators must be very transparent about what data is collected, how that data will be used, and who will have access to that data. Now, at a high level in this study, I found that there is a willingness to use technological solutions in youth online safety, but there are also some strong opinions about big tech companies, such as social media platforms, for seemingly not stepping up to address youth online safety solutions. There was skepticism about their willingness to come to the table to move solutions forward as well. IT professionals want to work with each other, even with competitors, in this social good, but from their perspective, there's no accepted organization that exists to bridge the gap between the secondary stakeholders in youth online safety. The implication of this that arises out of this research is that we need to move away from those black box approaches and proprietary framing of solutions to have a more open space where there are open algorithms and sources are shared and data usage is explicitly stated and made publicly available. This was seen as helping to promote the building of trust from users and hence eventually also contribute to sustainable plans to keep teens safe online. However, the major takeaway from this study can be summed up in a quote by an IT professional, which reads, "To me, as long as you have the collective goal supported and agreed to upon by everyone, then you should be good to go. If you don't have that consortium, the API does nothing. You kind of have to have both. You probably need the consortium before you need the API, because that's where you gain the data and that's where you're getting the insight and backing." At this point, we were still doing customer discovery under the I-Core training on entrepreneurship. Under that training, you're required to meet and talk with people every week. And after synthesizing our first study, we looked again at our socio-technical systems model to see what we had learned and decide what would be our next steps. That is, who could we possibly speak to? Looking at the model, we were able to identify more stakeholders by entrepreneurs, IT professionals, clinicians, educators, and researchers. And we recognize that they share the same goal as parents, that is to keep teens safe online. We were also able to get a glimpse of the processing they do in order to identify youth online risk exposures. And we were able to identify some elements of culture as well, that being a mistrust of big tech and a lack of transparency in solutions. However, we found through the training that we were not done. There were still more people that we could speak to, and here's why. We recognized that the participants in the first study were closely tied to the design and creation of software products, which is not representative of all secondary stakeholders in youth online safety. We also did not go in depth into how youth online risk exposures are identified by secondary stakeholders. Now, while participants in study one showed an openness to speak about the topic in general, there was also some reluctance to discuss the inner workings of their business. Another issue was that we did not identify what success means in the area of youth online safety for stakeholders in reference to the execution of their precise jobs. Also, in considering the use of technology by youth and restrictions that may be placed on them by their parents and guardians, the question arises, does the approach of using AI and parental control software generalize to all youth, or does the approach of using technology generalize to all youth? Researchers so far found that it may not be generalizable. For instance, Badillo, Urquiola, and colleagues found that youth with special circumstances, such as family instability, they experience more high-risk online interactions. Other studies have also shown that foster parents lacking technological skills often took to heavy-handed technology restrictions as a means of prevention. However, this heavy mediation could further disadvantage youth as it restricts them from using a potentially valuable resource, that is, the internet. These issues went into the formulation of my second study, and I'm happy to say that the findings of this second study were published in January 2023 at the ACM International Conference on Supporting Group Work, and its proceedings are in the proceedings of the ACM PACM Journal. I once again would like to sincerely thank my colleagues and co-authors in helping me with this. I'd like to thank Carla, and I would really like to thank Naroon for helping me out in this study. Now, in study 2, we were extending the investigations into the secondary stakeholders of youth online safety to include individuals who could help in addressing the issues just identified. We did this by reaching out to social service providers who work with underprivileged youth. Now, if you recall, the social service providers and local government, they exist under the third level as well. I pointed out to you more so inside the beginning. They exist in the third level of the Bronfenbrenner's framework. These SSPs, through the execution of their jobs, they interact with vulnerable youth sometimes on a day-to-day basis, and previous research identifies vulnerable youth as more likely to have risky online interactions, right? So in this study, we sought to answer the following research questions. What online risks do social service providers of underprivileged youth deem most concerning in terms of the positive outcomes they are trying to achieve? What are the current ways in which youth social service providers become aware of online risk? And what would be the advantages and disadvantages of an automated risk detection system that notified providers of risk encountered by the youth they serve? To answer these questions, I, along with the assistance of Stir Lab colleagues and also some research assistants, conducted 37 semi-structured interviews of youth social service providers. The interviews were conducted on Zoom, transcribed, and open-coded for thematic analysis. The interviews were 30 to 45 minutes in length, and the questions in the interviews were also open-ended and asked participants to tell us about themselves and how they interact with teens, how online risk impacts their success metrics, and how they go about discovering youth online risk exposures, and also the benefits and drawbacks of using technology to assist them. In doing this, we spoke with participants who worked in the judiciary system, educators, mental health therapists, and child welfare officers. Let's get into the findings of this study now. Research question 1 examined what online risk social service providers of underprivileged youth find most concerning. Sexual risk came out as the most prevalent online risk mentioned by SSPs. In discussing sexual risk, participants spoke of youth attempting to meet adults online for sex, and also raised concerns about youth engaging in pornography by sharing intimate photographs of themselves or videos of themselves with people they think are trustworthy, who in turn share that media with others. This quote by a law enforcement officer exemplifies this. One of the things that we tend to see the most when it comes to juveniles is sending images of themselves. We do a lot of time looking for people that they've sent these pictures to, or communication that they're having usually with older people. Now, cyberbullying was the second most prevalent online risk identified by youth social service providers, SSPs. And in discussing this, each group recounted incidents of cyberbullying that led to serious offline consequences, such as youth dying by suicide. Social service providers discussed the fact that cyberbullying allows bullying to perpetually continue, blurring the online and offline modalities in such a way that youth don't get to escape from it. The seriousness of this is stated by a child welfare officer who said, "We actually had a youth that was being cyberbullied, and that unfortunately impacted their mental health quite negatively. COVID hits, there was more of an home online environment, and cyberbullying took place. That child committed suicide." Internet addiction was the last major online risk that they identified. This risk was said to not only affect school attendance, but it also deteriorated the communication and interactions that youth have with one another. For instance, child welfare officers and educators spoke of youth becoming antisocial or otherwise detached from communicating in real life, instead opting for digital forms of communication with peers. In study 2, we also examined what are the current ways in which youth social service providers become aware of online risks they identified in research question 1. Participants shared that they predominantly find out about online risk through youth self-reports. Participants spoke of youth sharing their online struggles with them only after building trusting relationships, and that barrier of discourse has been broken down. Identification of online risk exposures through formal investigations was the next major online risk discovery method. And participants shared that this happens as part of investigative processes through reports made by individuals, sting operations deliberately set to capture persons committing illegal activity, and forensic analysis of devices used by youth, and also sometimes through testimony given in court cases. Participants generally did not like when this happened through formal investigation, as it could be more problematic for youth than if it were managed or mitigated through other means beforehand. Now, the use of risk assessment tools was the next major online risk discovery method shared by participants. And these risk assessment tools are formal risk assessment instruments, such as they shared instruments by name, the Children's Functional Assessment Rating Scale, and the Patient Health Questionnaire 9. These tools are administered to youth as part of therapy registration and also when participants visit schools for discussions. An issue that participants pointed out about the use of risk assessment tools, though, was that youth often choose to skip answering questions which focus on topics that they would rather not disclose information about. They also stated that youth would generally not speak of topics or situations if they are not specifically asked about them. Finally, research question 3 investigated the advantages participants and the advantages and disadvantages of using technology to identify or notify youth social service providers when youth experience exposure to online risk. The advantages that participants gave were knowing what the youth were faced with at a particular point in time would assist them in doing their jobs, as there were things to which they have limited access to as SSPs, and that knowledge would help them to perform earlier interventions. As a mental health practitioner put it, it would give me the ability to intervene sooner so that significant damage could potentially be prevented. The major concern that they raised, however, was the accountability that would be placed on them to address the incidents that are reported by technology solutions. As one juvenile officer stated, potentially we could be liable because when we are part of our charges, if we are doing, if we're going to assess for something, or if we're going to screen or monitor something, then we have a duty to respond to it. While access to data was also raised as a concern, it was previously raised in study 1. So the concern that I want to draw your attention to, which moves the dissertation goals forward, is the concern of humans being needed in the technology. In this, participants raised concerns of the inability of algorithmic solutions to take a more nuanced view by utilizing the contextual environment of individual youth. They said it may lead to decisions being made that cause youth to be placed in worse situations than they already exist. As a welfare officer stated, we need to be flexible with that because that's how everybody's raised. What we found from analyzing the results in study 2 is that online risks negatively impact the ability of youth social service providers to perform the duties of protecting youth. They don't really have a good way of discovering and tracking the online risk experienced by youth. The discovery is inconsistent, haphazard, or incidental. Early discovery of the online risk, however, could be beneficial, and technology could help in this area, but it could also cause some issues for the SSPs in executing their duties. The implications of these findings is that risk detection systems should prioritize the online risk of cyberbullying and risk of a sexual nature. Also, to allow youth social service providers the ability to address these situations properly, youth online risk detection solutions should support filtering risk cases by levels such that the most concerning cases can be dealt with sooner. The major takeaway that moves my dissertation forward, however, from study 2 is that quote by the mental health practitioner, which speaks towards the flexibility that is needed, leading to necessary human involvement. This reinforced the takeaway from study 1, which pointed to the need for a community. At the end of this study, we were able to identify social service providers as secondary stakeholders in our socio-technical model with the additional goals of keeping youth out of the judiciary system. We also added new processes going into the identification of youth online risk exposures and a new cultural aspect of online risk influencing offline risk and offline behavior. So where are we now? We have been able to address research questions 1, 2, and 3 by identifying who the secondary stakeholders are, what major challenges they face, and how they go about identifying youth online risk exposure. We learned that online risk detection solutions could possibly be beneficial in protecting youth online, but they come with some downsides and risks. We also learned that secondary stakeholders have an issue with black box and non-transparent approaches to youth online safety, and that they're willing to work together. Even though this willingness exists, there is no single body that brings those secondary stakeholders together to collaborate. And if such a body existed, it would have to take into account the existence of both technical and non-technical secondary stakeholders. Now, during the introduction, I mentioned that we had an industry partner working with us, Mozilla. They kept track with the progress we were making and suggested their own training on open leadership, which ran in parallel with the studies I just presented. This is the second major training in which I led the team. The ethos of this training is exemplified in their quote, "Open leaders design and build projects that empower others to collaborate within inclusive communities." We completed this training where we learned of the benefits of open innovation and of open methodologies. Now, open innovation has been shown to provide transparency as inner workings of solutions are made known to everyone, and they're also inclusive as anyone can join open projects, and open projects also remove duplicative and siloed efforts as open solutions can be used and freely extended by anyone. Based on this understanding from academic research, entrepreneurial training, and open leadership training, we merge the concepts together to create the idea of an open innovation youth online risk protection community. This community would use the methodology of working open to join the technical and non-technical secondary stakeholders into a transparent, inclusive community. Under further guidance by Mozilla, we took part as a team in their Trustworthy AI Working Group. This was the third major training exercise in which I led the team. Within this working group, we were required to design, propose, and develop a project using open innovation methodologies. Within this training, we designed the minimal viable product, or MVP, as far as our research had progressed at the time. Using the research that I just presented, we created an initial needs grouping, which the open innovation community would need to have. These needs are disseminating scientifically backed research, showing informed design and development of youth online solutions, and allowing user interaction. Based on this, we were able to return to our research and development objectives to add the open innovation community as the driving force behind the development of the commercial product. The goals of the community are to create research on youth online safety, provide a forum in which individuals can openly talk about youth online safety issues, provide a mechanism for the collecting of ecologically sound data sets, and collaboratively work on software solutions. Based on this information, we built Mosafely.org. It is currently comprised of two major sections. First, we have on the left the online community, which is the focus of my dissertation. And second, the Mosafely is that SaaS risk detection dashboard, which is shown on the right, and is created by Ashwak Al-Subai and colleagues under the same NSF project. The community was built collaboratively, and in order to introduce the community to you a bit more, I would like for you to watch this short video.
Welcome to Mosafely's open source online risk detection safety community. Mosafely uses evidence-based research, data, AI, and human input to help youth engage more safely online. One of the first contributions to Mosafely has been the IGDD framework, which serves as a solution by allowing youth to upload their Instagram data files and return information on the safe and unsafe conversations found. Our mission is bringing together people from industry, academia, and civil society to solve some of the world's greatest challenges of keeping youth safe online by leveraging artificial intelligence. Joining together in this open source community, we are now able to help you help our youth. Contributors can use this platform to build connections with people from different areas of expertise, all while being under the same interests of online safety. Connecting social workers, game developers, researchers, and law enforcement, Mosafely is open to all that want to make an impact in the realm of youth privacy. By joining this community, you will have access to not only the previously mentioned member search, but also our GitHub organization, where we will have a repository for you to share projects and view works by other members of the community, as well as a forum where you and other members of the community can discuss topics related to youth online safety. We would love for you to join Mosafely, and we look forward to your discussions in our community.
Now, the community was built collaboratively with the assistance of then UCF undergrads Luke Shirley, Naomi Nuguez, Ion Cho, and UCF master's student Maria Mosquera. The community is housed on an Amazon Web Services EC2 instance and runs in a Dockerized environment. As part of the architecture, we created a GitHub app, which allows community users to link their community account to their GitHub account, which in turn allows us to easily add them as collaborators on projects within GitHub. The second major section of Mosafely is the Mosafely Is That Sus dashboard. It is a team-centric risk detection dashboard that allows teams to upload their Instagram and Twitter data files and receive a risk assessment of the conversations and messages they had. I invite you once again to watch a short video about the dashboard.
This is the Mosafely Is That Sus risk detection dashboard homepage, a tool for youth to evaluate the artificial intelligence predictions for risks within their social media interactions. After I created an account and logged into the system, I can select the social media platforms that I usually use and want to upload my files for. Today, for example, I'll be uploading Instagram data. After I uploaded my Instagram file, I can see this dashboard that shows the AI predicted risks within my private conversations. To navigate through these results and evaluate the accuracy of these risk predictions, I can click on either the overall risks or one of the risk cards. On the left, we can view all of our conversations and the associated risks within them to give feedback on the risks for the conversation level and the message level. Let's select a conversation to get started. This conversation flags for both bullying and sexual risks. However, if we disagree with this assessment, we can change the assessment and provide feedback like so. Additionally, we are also able to change the relationship between the user and their conversation partner to recontextualize conversations and better adapt to situational conversations, such as between romantic partners. For example, if this was an acquaintance of ours, we could change the relationship like so. Finally, for the message level feedback. Each individual message in a conversation can be assessed and given feedback on whether the message level risks are correct or incorrect from the user's perspective. For example, if I don't find this to be bullying, I can give feedback like so. As we can see, this reduces our unconfirmed risky messages from 1 to 0, allowing the user to see that they have reviewed all potential risks within that particular conversation. These assessments help youth to be more self-aware of the risks they encounter online and will be used to enhance the accuracy of the AI models to provide more realistic solutions for their online safety.
The dashboard is also executed on AWS and is majorly comprised of a web graphical user interface or GUI for data file collection and risk assessment viewing, an S3 bucket for data file storage, and a machine learning API server, which is triggered by Lambda functions to execute machine learning algorithms on the uploaded data. We introduced the Mosafely online community to the academic community at CSCW 2021 during a workshop we hosted. What is missing at the moment is the answer to the final dissertation question. What tangible measures could be put in place by the youth online risk detection community to make interactions of youth online safer? Essentially, we want to know what needs to be done to improve the Mosafely online community. This leads me to propose my third study. The purpose of this study is to obtain feedback from the youth online safety stakeholder community on mosafely.org. In this study, I plan to focus on the following 3 research questions. 1, what are the design considerations for building a platform to support the building of a platform for youth online safety? 2, what are online safety stakeholder expert opinions on a youth-centric risk detection dashboard for youth online safety? And 3, what are the best practices for building an online consortium to support youth online safety? The study will be co-conducted simultaneously at UCF and Vanderbilt University by members of the NSF PFI project team. The participants in this study should be 18 years of age or older and either be a parent, work with youth, or worked in the area of youth online safety within the last 5 years. Along with new participants, we will also reach out to past participants of studies 1 and 2. The target participant count is 75 individuals. The research questions will be addressed by conducting a semi-structured interview session with design probes. Each interview should last about 60 minutes, and the sessions will be held using Zoom and recorded with automatic transcription enabled. Participants will also be offered a $20 Amazon gift card for their participation. The sessions will be comprised of 2 major sections. Section 1 will be a video demonstration of the risk detection dashboard, followed by design probes. The video demonstration will be the same video you watched not long ago. Section 2 will be about task completion within the Mosafely online community. Design probes will be asked throughout the task completion phases. Let's look at these sections a bit more closely. In the demonstration sections, the design probes will focus on the possible usage of the dashboard by other stakeholders, the barriers that might prevent community members from contributing to the dashboard, and any possible features that could be added to the dashboard to improve its usefulness. In the second section, the participants will be asked to share their screen and complete 4 tasks. The first task will be registration and profile creation on the Mosafely community. Design probes in this task focus on what data points the participant would be or would not be willing to share, as well as overall improvement of the registration process. In the second task, participants will be asked to use the online community to search for another member that they think they would want to work with and contact them using the messaging feature on the community. They have to make this determination based on the data points they can view on the member's profile cards, the public information that's viewable. Design probes in this task focus on what considerations went into the participant making the decision to contact a particular member, what data points are needed to assist in that decision, and what would be the best method of allowing community members to contact each other. The third task asks participants to propose a project to the community, and the design probes in this section focus on what barriers might cause members to not propose projects or restrain them from working collaboratively. We also interrogate what policies or regulations they think need to be put in place for protection of intellectual property. The final task asks participants to create a post on the forum, and design probes for this task focus on what forum topics the participant would want to see discussed on the community, what would encourage members to engage in discussion, and what would cause members to not participate. In closing the session, we will ask the participant a few probing questions on their knowledge of possible alternatives to community building, other community building technologies that might have a better fit. What could possibly be added to the community on a whole to encourage discussion, whether community moderation is needed, and what, if any, features should be restricted to community members only. Now, the design of Study 3 uses the known human-computer interaction evaluation methods of expert reviews with retrospective probing. We view the secondary stakeholders as experts in the application domain of youth online safety. Retrospective probing, along with open-ended questions, allows us to gather from them the insights that went into their thinking process on using the community and also viewing the dashboard. In closing, my dissertation provides empirical and artifact human-computer interaction contributions. It contributes empirical evidence on the state of youth online risk detection from the under-researched perspective of secondary stakeholders, the online risk exposure identification methods they employ, and empirical evidence for the need of a community focus on youth online protection. It also contributes an artifact in the form of a youth online risk community platform MVP. In recap, my first dissertation study has been accepted. My second dissertation study has been published, and I'm proposing this third dissertation study. I've already obtained IRB approval from both UCF and Vanderbilt University for my third study, and my current timeline to complete the entire dissertation is to execute study 3 from November 2023, next month, to the end of January 2024, complete data analysis of what is collected, and the dissertation writing by March 14th, so I can meet the format review, and defend the dissertation by the deadline of April 4th, which is the day before the dissertation that defense cutoff. Finally, I would like to express my extreme thanks to Dr. Winooski for having me as a PhD student. I would like to thank Dr. Hughes. He has been a great help and inspiration to me, and also Dr. Amon and Dr. Lee for being on my examination committee. Thank you to my family, my friends, and the entire StirLab team, which now spans multiple institutions inside the US. Thank you very much to Naroon and Maria and Luke. Thank you very much to Ashwalk. Thank you very much, Katie. I first met you during the CSCW workshop, and as a mentor now, you have been amazing. Thank you, Abdul Malik. Thank you, Sarvich. And thank you very much, Andy from Vanderbilt. These are my references, and that brings me to the end of my proposal. Any questions?
That's a great job, Xavier. So I would love to open it up to the general audience for a few questions before we get to the public questions from the committee members. Just keeping in account time, but I do want to give the audience a chance to engage. Feel free to turn on your camera if you have a question too. And I know that my PhD students know how to ask good questions, so I'd love to get at least one question from the audience.
In the chat.
I think I can. I'm not sure. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Xavier. That was a really great proposal defense and great presentation. I have a question mostly about building the community, like when building a community, I mean, either technically or like in the future, like what do you think it's going to be the challenges for other members to join, and how you're thinking to overcome these challenges?
I missed the very beginning of your question. Could you state that for me, please?
Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So when you build the community, what challenges did you face, and what challenges do you anticipate that you will face in the future for members to join your community, and how do you think you will overcome these challenges?
Okay, so in building the community, the challenges that we face were realized during the training, the open leadership training, and also the secondary training of the Trustworthy AI workshop. And that was mainly around the motivation of people, attracting them, engaging them, and keeping them working along with the project. Those were major issues. I even had issues within the larger team on how to do this because everyone has their own specific focus. And one of the issues that comes out in open innovation is that people are volunteering. So we always have that split focus most of the time. And you have to know how to get the most out of the limited amount of time that people have to share with you. How we went about solving that is by recognizing that leadership is necessary. And as a leader, you have to recognize and be pinpointed about what is needed now to make the most of the current situation and get you where you need to be from point A to point B. You have to be very specific about that. So I learned, with the help of Dr. Winooski and also Temi from Mozilla, I learned that really need to sit down and plan and look at the skill sets of everyone and figure out who needs to be doing what. What is the best way we can avoid churn by tailoring small assignments to specific people or groups of people and let those small incremental parts add up to a large whole. Going forward, I think that would be a remaining challenge inside the literature about open innovation. That has remained one of the major challenges that all open innovation projects face. And one way that I want to get around that is by making sure that I can get the project to a state where it is useful to the person that I want to help help the community and invite to the community to help to move the community along. So identifying that usefulness for the particular party and really doubling down on that to encourage them to get involved and keep working. I hope I...
All right, great. So do we have any other questions from the audience? Okay, well, I'll go ahead and open up the question to the committee members. These are the open questions, and we'll have a private committee chat as well.
Yeah, I have some questions. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, I think like your studies, all the three studies are very interesting, and also the feedback or points of view from different stakeholders in this problem, are very valuable. So I wonder, like, how did you reach out to them? I see you have IT professionals, you have therapists, right? You have also like researchers. For us, it might be easier to reach out to recruit researchers. But yeah, how did you reach out or recruit all these diverse stakeholders?
Thank you for that question. Yes, so within the UCF I-Core training, we're required to talk with people every week. It's really intense. And one of the ways that we went about finding participants was by first looking at the network of the entrepreneurial team. So we reached out to just about everyone that Dr. Winooski knew. We also had Miss Jan Edwards, and Mr. Jason Fisher, who are on the team, who are industry mentors. We reached out to everyone that they knew as well. And when we spoke to those people that they introduced us with, we also asked them, okay, so given what you just went through in this interview session, are there any other people that we could possibly reach to that you may know in your network, because you're in this thing every day? We took the stance of researchers, at least I'm a researcher, and I'm not being from the US as well. My network is quite small, so I really depended on the networking in order to find those participants. And lucky for me, the entrepreneurial team and Dr. Winooski knew a lot of people in the space of youth online safety. Jan Edwards, she is an advocate for youth online safety, and she works in the space. She has her own company in the space doing advocacy. And Jason Fisher, he's an IT professional, but he's worked with companies before in youth online safety solutions, and he introduced us to a really great connect at Two Hat, which helped us to really move things along. And from those connections, we really snowballed out and found a lot of participants.
I see. Yeah. My thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. My second question is like, I'm just curious, because your study mostly focused on the socio-technical perspective. I wonder if any of your participants mentioned about the laws, like for instance, COPPA, like the law protect children online, right? Like, do they mention that, or like what are their perspective about that? Like, do you think the law is perfect, or do they feel like they need more, they need stronger legal support for, you know, developing such system or building such community? Yeah.
Yes, they did mention the laws, and what came out was that they definitely think the legal framework needs to be strengthened. They pointed to other countries having stronger legal frameworks, and the jointed nature of the framework here in the US kind of being left up to the state. Whereas like GDPR encompasses the entire Europe, whereas here it's left up to the state, and therefore companies who would normally be forced to provide certain protections, they could not provide those protections because they're based in other states and that sort of stuff. So yes, they did mention those laws and stated that they needed strengthening. It does come out in study one, the actual paper, study one, a bit more. But it I didn't raise it in this setting because it really didn't move along the community per se. But what is interesting is that the community could possibly serve as a lobbying point to make laws and regulations be enacted or have them discussed in an open setting.
Oh, yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah. My last question is about like, because, you know, technologies are developing very rapidly, right? Do you envision like some challenges or opportunities? Like for instance, when teens use more and more like video sharing service, or, you know, other emerging social media or emerging technologies, do you envision like, or like, do you have any future direction, a future plan about it? Yeah.
Oh yes. So this plagued the NSF project actually. So one of the things that happened during the execution of the project, the social media company kept changing their data file again and again and again and again and again. So our solutions kept breaking and breaking over and over. So yeah, in terms of new technologies and new companies coming up, that is definitely going to be an open challenge. One of the things that we have considered doing, and it's under consideration with the team, is to open source the section of our project that intakes the social media data, so that the community can quickly work on fixes when things break. So in that sense, that is where we're going. We haven't done it as yet because since there are multiple organizations involved, Georgia Tech, Boston University and stuff, we have to be very clear and careful about intellectual property and what is open source and what isn't and stuff. So yeah, that's how we're going to handle that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Looks like Charlie's raising his hand.
Yeah. So one of the questions I have is on transparency, which seems very important when it comes to the AI/ML system. Which among your people, you've got police officers, you've got social workers, you have teens, and you have parents. Which of them seem to be the most curious about and most concerned about lack of transparency?
I would say the parents seem to be most concerned about lack of transparency. And here's the funny thing. In study one, when we interviewed a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of those entrepreneurs are parents themselves. And some of them became entrepreneurs because their child started to self-harm. And in going through that horrible experience, they recognized that it started online from things that were doing online and experiencing online. And there were no tools that that existed to help. So they became entrepreneurs. So the parents and entrepreneurs are up there in terms of who are most concerned about the transparency of AI and ML solutions. And they really double down on the need for social media to be more transparent about what is going on with the data, how that data is being used, and also like how GDPR says, if we request the data, you have to give it to us, really enact those sort of laws and regulations in their solutions.
Okay, and in the sense you're moving to an open environment or have moved to that, how are you going to make sure that new contributions meet those standards of transparency? That seems like a very challenging issue to me.
Yes, it is a very challenging issue. We have not bottomed down on just how we're going to go about doing that particular aspect as yet. We, in study 3, the question about whether the community needs moderation is trying to make a headway down that line to figure out, hey, what rules and regulations have to be put in place to ensure quality. At the moment, what we have put in place is that the NSF-PFI team would be the administrators and the leaders and decide what is accepted and what isn't accepted. And that came out inside the open leadership training as well, as a form of open boundary, as opposed to open source, open innovation. We are within open boundary. The leadership team controls where the product goes, but allows and takes ideas from outside of the team, right? So we're more along the lines of open boundary rather than open source at the moment.
That's it for me.
Awesome. Mary Jean?
I really enjoyed your presentation. So really nice job and great to see that you're also publishing the results as well. Couple of questions I had. And my internet connection was breaking up, so it's possible I missed something here or there. In study 2, you noted that the youth online self-reports were a primary way through which the secondary stakeholders learned of those youths encountering risks. So I'm just wondering, do you have any intuitions as to how the types of disclosure relationships could be built in order to promote risk encounter disclosure? So how can adults help youth feel comfortable to disclose? And I asked that because also the importance of that type of communication was noted in your study 2 research question. 3, where it was noted as a concern that that kids might not feel comfortable to speak up. That was your access to data theme. So do you have any intuitions about that?
Okay, so in terms of that particular aspect, what the participants had shared is that all of the technological solutions may not actually be useful, or they're not the holy grail. They must be paired with talking with youth and building that trustful relationship with them. We can't just implement technology and that's it. How to go about building that trusting relationship is actually the focus of other members of the STIR lab, the lab that I'm in. And they have stated in their research that possibly implementing things like nudging, where you implement nudging inside a solution and say, instead of say, hey, youth, I'm going to tell your parents, you say, hey, you probably shouldn't be looking at this, nudge them along the right path instead. And also implementing solutions where parents and teens monitor each other. So it's more of a equalized balancing setting. So I monitor what you do, you monitor what I do, and we can discuss about what is going on in each setting. So while not the primary focus of my research, the proposal and Mosafely, the online community, is trying to capture all of that and curate all of that research in a place where parents and teens and anyone really can go on the system and see what's going on, possibly search to say, hey, how do I build trust with my teen, and get a curated list of scientifically backed research that instructs them how to do so.
That's great. Yeah, it's nice to hear you tie together those findings about open innovation, but also that you still need that communication beyond that technological piece or technical piece. So thanks. Yeah, and one other question I had is just sort of general. Your qualitative analyses yielded lots of rich information about online threats and how to handle them. So given the number of themes you identified, can you highlight what you consider to be the most standout finding that could be like a newspaper headline, let's say, to say, like what was one of the most useful things you found? So not necessarily a takeaway, but a finding on its own.
Oh, man. So that's a little difficult for me because there are so many interesting findings. When my advisor moved away to Vanderbilt University, what happened when they did that is Vanderbilt University started to really look at her research, and they came across the article that we did on duty to respond, and they found that article to be very telling. And they really zeroed in on that duty to respond aspect. That had hit me when we were doing the research as well. I did not actually recognize that social service providers are under so much pressure. And you know, I'm based in computer science, so I'm like, yeah, let's use technology, let's implement. And there's a stakeholder that is saying, hey, you know what, that may be good, but really you have to consider, if you use technology, the youth can suffer. Someone might see the outputs and use it in a way that jeopardizes that particular team and gets them in trouble. And that's not what we want to do. So if you're going to go down that route, we don't want to use the technology. So that would pretty much be what I would zero in on all of this research. Even though I want to build a community and stuff, the human aspect of it is what I would really like to take forward.
That's excellent. Yeah, I agree. That is a standout finding and also informs what you have to do moving forward, taking into account those stakeholder perspectives. So I think that's a great takeaway. Thanks.
Yeah.
Great.
I love
So,
that too.
so I don't think we need to have like a private meeting with Xavier. So can we just go ahead and do the committee meeting now?
Yeah.
Okay, so can everybody who's in the room go into the waiting room breakout room? And Xavier, if you can hit pause on recording, that would be great.
Except for the committee, of course, should not go to
Yes,
the
committee,
breakout
you
room.
guys should stay here.